amazing session, as you guys can already see on the screen. The next session that we're going to have will be the breakout session, which is talking about the practical solutions for a resilient post-COVID world. Our phenomenal moderator for this session shall be Nikamdile Uwaje-Begho, who is the CEO of Future Software Resources. And with those few words, I will hand over to her extremely capable hands to take us into this session where we will be talking about how can we actually practically implement all these conversations that we've had during the day today. I hand over to you.
Thank you so much. And I'm very excited to moderate this session where we explore practical solutions for a resilient post-COVID world. And I think especially for the continent, COVID has been a type of diagnostic tool that helps us really test our readiness for the fourth industrial revolution. And I think we all agree that we knew that we had quite a few gaps, but I feel that COVID has really helped us highlight some of the key digital infrastructure deficits that we've had in terms of power and broadband internet. And when we look at those being really big challenges when we try and work from home, also looking at education and especially the delivery of education, same thing with healthcare and the delivery of healthcare. And then also public sector services delivery, private sector retail deliveries, and how that is actually managed in terms of supply chain, in terms of organizations having e-commerce capabilities and really struggling with fulfillment of their goods. And also really thinking about sort of smart city infrastructure. I think that we can really see a lot of gaps there, and I'm really happy to start seeing a lot of conversations around how do we start building smart cities. And the last point, I think, in terms of infrastructure deficits that we're really seeing is around data and how we manage data, and also how we spread and communicate that data, and how we make that data available for the general public. Today with me, I have Deborah Enyon Oni, founding and managing partner of Hilltop Solicitors. I have Ifeanyi Jemie, global investment banker and director of AC of DC funding programs, digital transaction services, and Salisu Alaji Uba, global supply chain consultant, NatQuest Limited. I'm going to start by just asking each of my panelists to introduce themselves in sort of a very quick 1-minute introduction before we jump into the discussion. So Deborah, I'll start with you.
All right, thank you, Nkemdile. My name is Deborah Enyone Oni. I'm the founding partner and the managing partner of Hilltop Solicitors, a law firm based in Lagos here in Nigeria. We're into corporate and commercial practice, the real estate practice, and also the blockchain practice. That's our focus now. My major purpose in the blockchain area is a need to fill the gap. And so we try to do that by equipping and creating awareness and education for the younger lawyers, the undergraduates and the graduates, about the need to come to get digital skills, and of course to educate them about the blockchain, to come into the blockchain space. Not just all the lawyers, but the female. My passion is for the females, is on females, the women and the girls, to bring them into the space to be able to participate and not just represent, because I highlighted some issues and some problems in the society and in the environment here and in my industry. And I saw the way I can go about leveraging technology to be able to solve this is to have a group of other colleagues that probably understand this technology and have these technological skills that we could be able to execute this together, because truly I won't be able to do it alone. And due to some of the personal experiences I had, which spurred me into having that passion to be able to concentrate to create an enabling environment for women like me, and most especially in a male-dominated industry where I belong to the legal practice. And my experience as a young lawyer back then, I decided that there's a need for me to pull up other young ladies, other other younger lawyers, the undergraduates, those who are graduates now, and tell them about the disruptive technology which is here to transform our industry, and there's a need for us to key into it and be able to make our impact in terms of policy formulations and in terms of the contributing greatly to the change in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a really great introduction, and I'm happy to have another powerhouse woman on this panel.
Thank you.
So Ifeanyi, I'll go over to you now.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Ifeanyi Jemie. I'm the director of the Africa Chamber of Digital Commerce Funding Programs. My background is global investment banking. I've been involved with this ACFDC for the last year. And what we do is we work on facilitating what we call our flagship programs, our projects that are focused on Africa, primarily digitization, primarily rural industrial development, and focusing on SME, small medium enterprises. Prior to that, I was with Citigroup in New York, as well as another firm, a boutique bank in New York, where I also did some work in Dubai, and as well as Saudi and other parts of the Middle East that were in the GCC. So that's my background in a nutshell. And also currently I'm a managing partner of True Vines, which is my private company for independent sponsorship, capital raising, and investment banking.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Salisu, over to you, please.
Yeah. Good evening, good afternoon all. My name is Salisu Uba. I am a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. I am a global supply chain consultant. My experience cut across a wide range of industries in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I am also one of the co-founders of the African Chamber of Digital Commerce. My experience with blockchain technology started not quite alone, but currently I am doing my PhD working on adoption of blockchain in the oil and gas supply chain, focusing on Nigeria. It's a pleasure to be here and to contribute to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So as you can see, we're in capable hands here. And I think that this panel really has so much experience across so many different sectors, as well as so many different topics that have to do with how we actually approach building our post-COVID world on the continent. And Ifeanyi, I think I'll start with you. So you, through ACFDC, you do a lot of investing in very exciting new startups and ventures. So I have questions around, are these startups and ventures on the continent? And what are the most exciting projects that you have invested in, and what do they focus on in terms of problem solving and solutions?
Great question. Thank you. So currently, the stage of where our fund is we are funding projects directly. We're finding this is where investor appetite is right now, is direct investment into ventures that will produce a clear return and commercial return. And so what we're working on is bringing technology into the continent. We're working on both bringing technology into the continent as well as developing it there in the continent. The second part of that, which is developing locally, comes from our ideation lab, which I don't run, but is another part of the ACFDC, which is focused on sort of like an incubator. The fund program, currently the projects that we're looking at are really, I would say, 2 or 3 main areas: remittances, cross-border remittances, credit lending, as well as agriculture and industrial development. So among these initiatives, the way that we're working on them is to really put these all together. The way we see this as far as the digitization, in order to create financial inclusion, it means activating both the onshore infrastructure as well as bringing technology from abroad. So what we do is we joint venture with the right technology partners, the right solution, while we structure to maintain ownership on the continent, and then we provide, or a good amount of the ownership on the continent, and we provide and we bring in international capital, which brings in, which we think will help stimulate that local investment. And then what we're doing is with these, with the projects that we create, we're hoping to create an ecosystem where we can do a lot more in rural activities. So for example, and I can talk about some of the stuff that we're doing on a very high level. You know, some of it is still in the work in NDA, but, you know, one of the projects we're working on is with the microfinance banks in Nigeria. You know, there are almost 1,000 microfinance banks there that have not met the full goal of financial inclusivity, primarily due to just the burgeoning nature of the industry, higher interest rates, and other frictions, which we believe we can ameliorate with digitization. So what we're looking at there is, how can we enable it so that people sending remittances back home are sending it at zero or no cost and able to send that directly to their families in the villages, as opposed to them having to rely on banks also just in the cities. And that also allows people to have more financial inclusivity, income data, and now they can actually begin to maybe get credit facilities from those microfinance local banks. They can begin to do a lot more. They can begin to fund SMEs. And we work with the local finance managers who are already working with the local farmers, the local landowners, to combine assets and to do these type of financing activities. We help them with digitization so that they can do this a lot more efficiently, that we can have a lot more data. And with that, that's going to provide for us enough data, which we believe within 2 years will provide for an ecosystem where we can provide, be able to get the right data to lenders, to provide data to these type of small business lenders all across Nigeria, and then to repeat this in other countries where we're focusing on, such as Botswana, Libya. We're also looking at, and some of our projects are there as well. And the goal there is the savings that we have on remittances will go back into, as far as on those fees that you typically will get, part of those savings will go into donations, which will be towards our impact funds, which will be our formalized fund to launch next year to actually invest in a pipeline of projects that we've developed over the course of this year. So this is sort of our goal currently.
I think that's super interesting, and I wish you all the best with that. I think the work that you're doing is really important to not only unlock additional sort of economic potential, but also to include players who are not currently included in the digital economy. And Deborah, we all know that there are a lot more women that are excluded than men. And, I think that we've seen quite a lot of programs that specifically focus on women and focus on, sort of maybe lending to women or getting women to, engage in digital skills, acquiring digital skills. But I still think that, women sort of are, sort of marginalized when it comes to the digital economy on the continent. So what do you, what do you see, and how do you think we can increase, women participation? You come from a very male-dominated field, so do I. So I think we both know how it feels to be the only woman at the table.
Exactly.
We want to see more of us. We want to be involved in the decision making. We want to, have a voice. So how do we ensure that this participation doesn't only happen in the boardroom, right? So you and I have privilege to make those decisions and to contribute the way that we're doing here. But this is very high level. So how do we do more of that inclusion as we sort of go down the pyramid, and really ensure that we include women that are at the bottom of the pyramid, women in rural areas, women who are maybe not as educated, and who also are not financially included. What are your ideas around, how we do that? Because I think those really play a very big role in building this resilient post-COVID world.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. Okay. Thank you. I guess it was directed to me, right?
Yes, it was, Deborah.
All right.
But if you can add on once she's done.
All right, very well. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you for the question. And yeah, I know one of the problems we have is about those in the rural zone. Because if we have to come up about a solution, we must have a solution that has that comes in two different ways, having regards to women in the various segments. I mean, we have women that are more privileged than the others. we have a lot of our women that are into farming. We have a lot of our women that are back there in various rural zones. Most of us come from rural places down to these cities. And I know one of the things I committed to myself in helping to solve this, I realized, I sat and I said, okay, what is the issue? Now I realize that those even in the urban areas, as me, most of them do not even have an idea about what is going on. And so I committed myself to the fact that I should work with these ones, try to make them understand, bring them to that level that you don't have to be perfect, but you have to just believe in it, key into it, and understand that there is a transformation actually, both in our industry and as a gender. And then I tell most of them that are close to me now, that one of the visions that we have is also, the slogan is carry the other woman along, carry the other person along. We are going to mobilize efforts. I mean, it's not by mouth, because like I know, the first thing that came to my mind, I was like, I have to go back to my hometown. I have a lot of them. They're not far-fetched. I have cousins that are females that I know that I don't like their states where they are now. So if I need to bring them up, I know if I am to go alone, it's going to be slow, at a slow pace, right? And so if I can work with forces here and build up others along with me, we could move our arsenals to various aspects where we come from. Now, like take an example, most of the internships that I run, and then came about the mentorship. When I started this group, speaking with other colleagues, lawyers, and the females, when I say lawyers, not all the lawyers, the females in perspective, and then I try to make them understand this. I realized that we need the younger ones to come along. And then, of course, to go to the rural areas and also mobilize these people, get them to upskill, get them to learn, and then get them to be aware of what is happening so that we can move together as women. And so one of the things we can do is to start from where we are. I stay in Lagos, so I know I should start from here and move the capacities that I can build and, let them join my team. And what I do now is not just those in Lagos. Now I run a virtual internship via my platform, the law firm website, for younger lawyers, for undergraduates, for graduates, whereby our focus is on digital technology. And so when we do that, some of them, we transform them, we tell them to key into the longer vision, to be able to go and give back to the other women that are less privileged. And this is the key. If we succeed alone, that is not good, because we have a majority of us that are languishing at the backward end, at the remote ends, at the rural ends. So when they understand with me, we can now move to key into the vision. I know I have a couple of younger girls now, they tell me, I'm so happy that you're telling me about this digital thing. I mean, I've been hearing about it. What does it really entail? And the basics that I can. And of course, we're working on partnership to be able to give them more training and things like that. So we can also deploy these strategies back to the rural zones. But like I said, it's not just something we could just run into. We need to build within where we are and mobilize forces to key into the vision and go to affect the larger groups at the rural zones. But the thing is, we are resolute about it. We understand it. They now understand. Because one thing I understand is the issue of mentorship, the issue of awareness. Because most of the girls that I speak with, that I train in terms of the internship and the mentorship, they have no idea. And so when I realized, after speaking to the local ones, the ones around within my vicinity, within my Nigerian Bar Association branch, I speak with them and they are lost, they're not aware. I'm like, okay, this is one work I need to do. I need to work on this. And when I saw that it's not like the speed with that one yet, I discovered then I need to carry the younger ones along, because if the technology, the digital technology is going to be the future, then we should carry along those that are really behind us and not leave them lost. So now I am moving them, and that is being achieved. A lot of them are appreciating that. I mean, I have them scattered all over the various campuses, from various campuses in Kano, in my state, in Kogi State, from Jos, from different states. Have them for mentorship and for internship. And so I preach this, permit me to use the word, this gospel to them. Now take it to your various aspects, to your campuses. Now emphasize on the need for digital acquisition, for the digital acquisition skills. And then, of course, for those that are more interested in focusing and specializing on issues like the emerging technology, the blockchain and the AIs and all that, they meet me personally. Please, how do I read more about this? I refer them to the platforms that I use and the qualifications that I have. And of course, I'm still working more on it. I do a lot of research. I do content writing. In fact, some of them came to me themselves by virtue of the fact that they saw some of my content. Ma, I like this, please, can you put me through? So the work has started. The thing is that we know where we are going. We are trying to work to be able to achieve the longer goal. So we should be resolute to build, channel it down to the rural zone and not abandon them.
Yes, I completely agree. So what I'm hearing is there's need for very intentional and very focused mentoring, making sure that we prioritize internships for women, and we also ensure that they are able to acquire the right skills, and then obviously also lend our voice to advocacy. Ifeanyi, I know you have wanted to jump in on this as well and lend your voice to this, so please.
Absolutely. I love this. And I love also, that you've mentioned, there are many groups there that are also trying to address the issue with women, with lending. I think the key component that I would like to bring, or we would like to bring to the table as well, is interdisciplinary training, as you mentioned, that training, but also actually implementing it as an organization and bringing the partners and connecting with all of these groups to actually bring a wholesome interdisciplinary solution where women can get the training from different technology, agriculture, different aspects that are actually very specific, not just to business, but also to women, and that where they thrive in their business, what they're currently doing and how they can multiply that, how they can work together. And then also, like you said, bringing in and the internships and actually then putting them into those opportunities once they've received that training as well. So quite interesting, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Salisu, do you want to add anything to this? I can see you nodding away.
Yeah, I think for me, Deborah, you're doing a fantastic things around education awareness. And based on my academic background, so to say, the research I'm doing cut across not just creating the knowledge, but at the end of the day, what practical implication do we get from the research? So I believe one of the key things that we need to do in order to ensure the adoption, if you like, of the digital currency or central digital currency is the fact that education. But above all, I think we have to collaborate. I mean, this is something that requires the legislation. I mean, whether regulation or not, whether it is going to be regulated or not, perhaps we need to create that conversation. Let's have a very honest discussion with all the stakeholders around the implementation. And it is not just about having the technology. Yes, you can have the technology, but at the end of the day, what sort of resistance do we have in around ensuring the value that we intend to create? Because let me give you an example today. The banking sector, I mean, is one of the highly organized sector, so to speak, in Nigeria. But still, they have their own challenges. I mean, there are people that still don't believe about all these digital platforms. So education, and especially having a kind of collaboration with the educational institutions and other relevant stakeholders that we believe they have an input in ensuring the accelerated adoption of all these emerging technologies is really important, and is something that is the future. Especially COVID has exposed us to a lot of things, and I believe we should be able to see more aggressive development around blockchain, digital currency, and all of that.
Okay, so if we look
importantly for me, because of my supply chain background, I believe one of the key areas that we can have an integrated solution is the supply chain. Of course, supply chain has been disrupted by the COVID, and this has prompted a lot of industries to understand the fragility of their supply chains. And I believe even at last 3 to 5 years, we have seen increasing concerns about supply chain financing. But with the option of digital currencies and all of that, is going to really speed up and create more resilient supply chain ecosystem across virtually all industries. So it is a way to go, no doubt about that, but we need to create that conversation, honest conversation among the stakeholders. Let's understand what value, because if you look at recently the hype cycle released by Gartner, it shows a lot of alarming questions that even the enthusiasts of the technology cannot really answer. So we have to be honest. It shouldn't be a technology that is out there looking for a problem to solve. Rather, it should be more realistic. We have to look at it in more realistic, because at the end of the day, if you cannot create the value, it's not going anywhere. So we need to have that honest conversation. And I like the fact that a platform like this will bring a lot of people from diverse sectors, with wide range of knowledge and experience or on their own industries, and then interrelate the discussion and have the honest conversation. And then from there, we can start to see a lot of developments around digital currency.
Thank you so much. I will come back to you on some questions around supply chain. But before we do that, I just want to go back to Ifeanyi and really understand, sort of what do you think are the biggest opportunities in the fintech space, and how do you think we can really leverage those opportunities and maximize them to, first of all, sort of catapult the continent forward? I think when it comes to fintech, the continent is actually quite advanced with the solutions that we have. So how do we not just create these solutions, but also export these solutions and further monetize them and sort of bring them to market on a global scale?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful point. I think so within the continent right now, we have a number of technology solutions. And, the issue is, I think, partially because of the private nature of these, right? We need some more public engagement. And with that being said, like someone mentioned in the last panel, with a lot of the private coins and technologies and wallets, they can be up one day and gone the next month. And so if we want to develop this infrastructure that we're going to be developing on the private side, we hope to get public buy-in from the governments and private institutions, which is why we're working on the association levels to get access to the banking industries and so on, because there is a good need for that coordination with the onshore infrastructure. I think a lot of private coins in crypto try to avoid or go around the onshore infrastructure, which makes it difficult to commercialize. But when you're working with the onshore infrastructure, working with the partners who are licensed, who have all of those things, you don't have to go and raise all the capital for that. You can focus on providing the best solution. And then secondly, when you have a quasi-public-private effort, it's not one company looking to retain ownership in everything. It's about bringing the best solution to the table. And so we can engage multiple solutions. We can collaborate. As Salisu was saying, this is very key in order to actually create the commercial traction, as well as the, let's say, the stability, both from an actual execution standpoint and brand perception standpoint that will be needed. And imagine this, in a world of CBDCs, if we have, African central bank digital currencies alongside private coins within the same wallet, and that you can use that not just at the wholesale level, so not just for the banking industry, but for the retail level, which is, being able to use this digital currency at your local merchants or your local POS at the retailer, the grocery store. This is what provides financial inclusion that reaches all the way to the village, because in an era of COVID, where you have cash as potentially a bearer of virus, you have cash as something that is not efficient. People don't want to go to the bank and stand in physical lines. And then the mobile payments, it's only sufficient to a certain level. People still need that cash type of immediacy. With digital payments, when you have an integrated system, it would be a cash alternative, not necessarily a replacement, but an alternative, such that when there's a shutdown like this, perfect example. Central Bank of Nigeria did a 1.1 trillion naira stimulus to the manufacturing and health sector earlier in the year. That type of stimulus could be immediately disseminated digitally to the wholesale banking industries, as well as to the other industries directly to the manufacturers and actual companies, which directly work with the consumers. And now, and so what that provides is, you know, less friction. You know, when you look at systems like what is the central bank meant to provide, you know, they're meant to provide a system that is supposed to be sustainable, that will go through all these different shocks. And so when people lose trust in the ability for their currency to provide that in times of stress, you know, then there's also less investment dollars wanting to come into the country as well. So having a robust system, among one of the robust in the continent, I think would be tremendous, both for internal output as far as stimulus, and as well as external foreign income and capital flows.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that's really, really insightful. For all of this to happen, we need the right type of legal framework. So Deborah, I'm going to come to you. You know, what type of policies do you think we need to put in place as a country in Nigeria, but also as a continent, right? So we talk about the African continental free trade area, right? Which is basically supposed to enable trade across the continent. In order for this to work, you know, we need policies that sort of are continental and not just country specific. So what are your top 3 recommendations for policies that need to be put in place?
Thank you. Part of the policies that I believe in bringing out of implementation of policies is to have certain things in perspective.
Your voice is breaking, Deborah. Can you maybe adjust your microphone a little bit?
Okay.
Can you try again?
Hello? Hello?
Okay, this is much. Yeah, I think it's a bit better.
Is it?
It's still a bit faint. I'm not sure if I'm the
Okay.
only one.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think we can hear you. Go on.
Okay, all right. In coming up about policies that will help to regulate the fintech ecosystem, the various things need to be put into perspective.
You're still going in and out. Sorry to keep interrupting you. Maybe if you can maybe fix your microphone issues, and I'll just quickly jump to Salisu just to make sure that we keep rolling, because I'm conscious that we only have 5 more minutes. So Salisu, I was talking about the African continental free trade area, and obviously supply chain is a massive driver of trade. And, you know, so I think my question here is, what opportunities do you see for digital supply chain, and how can that really stimulate and spur the digital economy and also maybe accelerate the implementation of the African continental free trade area?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And as I earlier said, is the COVID has really exposed us to a lot of things that we think are not actually possible. But most importantly, for us in supply chain is the fact that companies are no longer competing. The competition is about supply chains, not companies. So I think we are likely to see a lot of digital transformation around supply chain. Though supply chain has really been for over the years global, especially in some key industries that has to do with the global markets and the global economy. But I believe this is a greater opportunity for the African continent, especially with the trade war between the US and America. Is going to be a huge opportunity for Africa. And of course, we need to put the right skills, most importantly, in ensuring that our supply chains, most importantly, not just supply chain, but the strategic components of supply chain, which is procurement. At the end of the day, we have a more digitalized procurement strategies within our industries in Africa. So to me, I think the time is now, and there is a lot of opportunities around blockchain, AI, and other emerging technologies in transforming supply chain. But importantly, we cannot just be talking about the potential opportunities around without highlighting the key issues that we have, which can actually be a big hurdles in terms of achieving the desired aim. I think the most important thing is the fact that there is lack of awareness among our critical stakeholders, which is very important. Government has a key role to play in ensuring that the speedy execution of the African Continental Agreement, because to my knowledge, there are some countries that are still resisting to key into the African Continental Agreement. That's the last time I checked. But I believe creating that kind of environment where they will be educated about the opportunities. And of course, for every opportunity, there is likely some disadvantage or challenges. But I believe there is always a way out of that. And for the adoption of blockchain, even though I can't imagine that Africa that is fully blockchain inclined in terms of supply chain, but I think we have a lot of opportunities and some industries, especially the retail, manufacturing, and of course, even the oil and gas are coming up with a lot of initiative in terms of digitalizing their supply chains and looking at blockchain as an opportunity that they can drive cost savings. But importantly, for all the blockchain developers, enthusiasts of blockchain, the value proposition has to be very, very clear. If you are convincing me today that I should use a blockchain-based system, what benefit am I driving from that? Of course, we have to know and understand that we have people that are very okay with lack of transparency, and they're happy with that, and they drive the industry. But of course, at the end of the day, we have to look at the immediate advantages and of course the long-term advantages of whatever we are bringing on board. So instead of making it more technical, the blockchain itself, we have to create a system where it accommodates basically everyone, where you have the accountants, the supply chain managers, they can really understand beyond just the technical aspect of the technology. So that's really important, and I believe a lot of us can actually support that. I believe even the African Chamber of Digital Commerce is doing a lot in terms of creating that awareness, especially to the key government representatives.
Thank you so much. Deborah, we have, I think, 2 more minutes, so
all
let's
right.
jump
okay,
on
I'll just put it on.
summarize our solutions.
I'm sorry, but all right. Okay, so some of the things we can put into perspective for that the regulators can put into perspective is about coming up with regulations that enhances the governance of each of governance around the fourth industrial revolution technologies, which this is if there's good regulations around this, it will actually invite or encourage investment across the various African countries. And of course, if they are able to regulate or bring about regulations that will spur up innovations and not kill innovations that will spur up innovations in terms of tackling the issues of financial inclusions that will cure access to lack of access to funds, in essence, will bring about liquidity. And of course, if there is liquidity, this will encourage investment in the various countries and then help to achieve the purpose of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And so each regulators of each African country should have into perspective some of these into perspective when they are coming up with regulations, to be able to come up with regulations that will spur up innovations, putting into perspective, what is this thing coming to solve? How is it going to help in the achievement of the objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement? And of course, that will help with investment and will help in the speedy growth of the economy.
Thank you so much. So I think I'll just quickly sum up. I mean, we have more than just one, practical solution. And I think that the beauty of this discussion is that we've really touched on, different areas of the entire digital economy value chain. And I think in summary, the key things are education, awareness, and advocacy of critical stakeholders, right? So this is from the decision makers all the way down to the actual players within the digital economy, as well as the consumers of digital products and the people who are transacting and exchanging digital currencies and digital transactions. We also have a keyword here, which is inclusion. And when we talk about inclusion, we talk about inclusion in terms of financial inclusion, ensuring that everyone is able to transact and able to contribute to this digital economy in a very sustainable and easy way, and also where people are able to trust the system and also have very little transaction charges in order to really be able to get the best value for the money that they are sending. We're also, when we talk about inclusion, we also really talk about inclusion of all stakeholders. So we talked about SME inclusion, we talked about inclusion of rural people, we talked about inclusion of women, and we talked about very practical steps of how especially women can be included. And I think that these can be sort of extended to these other stakeholders that we want to include, which are mentoring, funding, making internships available, focusing on skills development, as well as really creating a lot of awareness and advocacy. We also talked about the digital supply chain and how the digital supply chain really needs a lot of, again, awareness, education of stakeholders and the right skill level. So what we're really seeing here is, sort of this digital skills development being a resounding factor, but also making sure that we have the right policies in place and that we have the right strategies in place to drive these different initiatives. And lastly, you can't drive anything without funding, right? So you have policies, you have, you've done your advocacy, you have your stakeholders on board, but without funding, there really nothing is going to happen. So we need buy-in from government, we need public-private partnerships. We need to ensure that, when we think about CBDC, that we think about it at a retail level and not just at a sort of corporate level. And we have to ensure that the policies are put in place to spur innovation and not to put more obstacles in. So I think that our solution as Team A is really, very multifaceted. But I think that what it has brought to light is that there is need for stakeholders from different industries to really come together in a sort of think tank and really trash out these solutions and create viable products, right? So we almost need a multi-sector think tank that involves policymakers, that involves lawyers, that involves people who are in private equity and funding, people who are doing research, people who focus on digital skills development and women inclusion, and bring all of these stakeholders to the table to create a roadmap and a plan and proper products that can spur the development that we want to see in a post-COVID and more resilient Africa and Nigeria.